History of Team Names by Tyler, Drew, and Ian. Have you ever wondered why sports teams are forced to change their name so often? This is a controversial topic that has been around since the 1960s and continues to be an issue today. The Washington football team, currently known as the Washington Commanders, have been in deep waters for years now. They almost lost their stadium in 1961 due to George Preston Marshall not allowing the team to draft players who were African American. For the 1962 season, the formerly known Washington football team was the last team in the NFL to officially sign any African American players. In 1972, the team began to get a lot of attention because they were named the Redskins for being a racial slur against Native Americans. If you think that's bad, in 1960, there was a high school in Chicago called the Pekin Chinks. The name Pekin originated from Beijing, China. Some people may not know what the word chink means. It's a racial slur against Chinese immigrants that white people used to consider them as a threat. They were forced to change their name to Pekin Dragons in 1981. This just shows how there are many teams that had to change their name for being offensive. In 2022, the Cleveland Indians changed their names to the Cleveland Guardians. This was a huge change for the team in the entire city of Cleveland. This name change was something that was very controversial among some people and still is. There are always going to be people who agree and disagree on something, as it is with name changes in sports. There are people who believe that the original name that the team name had was offensive and needed to be changed, and there will be people who think that the team should have kept that name and that is just a team name, and which wasn't intended to offend or insult when they came up with it. History of the name, the original name Indians, was originally named after one of their best players named Louis Sokow Alexis, who was a Native American. They named the team after him because of how good of a player he was for them. They managed to use this name for 105 years. It was brought upon the name Indians was rude and offensive to many Native Americans, and that using the name in that way was like belittling it. It wasn't just the team's name that was offensive. Most of the team's name had a mascot that was also very insulting to Native Americans' cultures on its own. Many of the teams that had a name related to Native Americans usually had a logo or mascot that depicted a Native American in an unrealistic or comical fashion. Protests against the name and the Chief Wahoo logo have been going on since the 1970s due to it symbolizing racism. Chief Wahoo was finally retired after the Guardians went to the World Series in 2016, which gained a lot more attention. One way to fix this issue is to simply change the team's name to something more appropriate. So far, many professional teams have changed their names, and so have some high school and college teams. People find this to be expensive because they have to change all their merchandise and team branding. Everything from jerseys to the front gate to even the little logo on the concession stand. For a high school team, this cost is not as big as it would seem for the payoff. According to recent research from teamdevel.org, it would only take a high school $15,000 to $30,000 to change their branding. A college and pro team may be a little more, but they seem to make up for it with selling merchandise, concessions, and tickets. For a college team to change their name, it could cost anywhere from $200,000 to $300,000. For a professional team to change their name, it would cost about $10 to $20 million. Most franchises can make this up easily with selling merchandises. A lot of teams that are in this situation act like it will greatly impact their financial situation negatively. After looking up how much the cost is compared to how much teams bring in, it is a cost that is worth it. You cannot put a price on making the world a nicer place. Although most of the sports teams with names like these were forced to change them, there are a lot of teams today with very offensive names that still try to keep them and will defend them. The Robstown Cotton Pickers is an actual high school in Texas that recently went viral for their name. Many people have found their name very offensive. Robstown High School says that their mascot represents pride and hard work for African Americans who migrated over the border for better living conditions. The school will continue to receive backlash for their name, yet the plan to continue to support it, along with support of the Robstown community as well. These teams may try to keep their name and argue that it's not offensive or that they may not have the money to change it, but it is clear that they do have the money and resources to do so. And if they don't, it's because of them wanting to make even more money rather than making the world a better place.